It's how you want to hunt. There's no right or wrong,
Yeah.
I'm never going to look at somebody and say, you hunt a compound, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You hunt a private, you're wrong. Each their own, what you want to do,
Yeah.
We're too small of a community to be fighting amongst each other,
Mm-hmm.
People talk about all the time, well, if we're gonna keep hunting alive, we need more hunters. That's not true because the hunters are such a small population. We'll never have enough hunters to be a swing vote to keep public access or private lands to be able to hunt. It's about representing the hunters that are in existence better.
Oh, you got her, dude. She's down.
Let's go.
Dude, I just shot a deer of a lifetime.
Freaking smoked him.
One with nature, and if you're a believer, one with God.
Definitely gets your heart pumping. Boy, you are in trouble.
Fall Obsession Podcast.
All right, we're back for another Fall Obsession podcast episode driven by our friends over at Ridge Rock Hunt Company, and we'll talk more about them at the end of the episode in the sponsor segment. I'm Sam with Fall Obsession, your podcast host. Appreciate you guys tuning in to another Monday morning episode. I'm pretty stoked about this week. One, to be recording in person with our guest, not something that we get to do all the time here on our podcast, and then also what we're going to get into today here with friend of mine I've gotten to know here a little bit better here recently, Jesse Johnson. Welcome to the podcast, man.
Appreciate you having me. Excited about it.
Yeah, man. We're happy to have you on board. And I know, like I said, we've kind of met through church and everything, and kind of gotten to know each other a little bit better in recent months and everything.
Yep.
Kind of talking hunting and stuff.
Yeah.
That's
figuring out we're both obsessed.
Yeah, we're both obsessed with hunting, figuring all that out and everything. But and we got some earlier today. We shot some cool video content together too. That'll be coming to our Fall Obsession pages in the near future, and looking forward to sharing that. But man, before we get into the meat of our discussion, and I know a lot of it will probably revolve around public land hunting, because that's a big part of what you are passionate about, and one of the reasons I asked you to join us. But for our listeners' sake and our viewers' sake, go ahead and just kind of tell us a little bit about yourself, kind of where you come from, where you've been, and your experience as a hunter.
Cool. So like Sam said, Jesse Johnson. I grew up in South Louisiana. Grew up pretty much a hunting family. All my grandparents, aunts, uncles, everybody hunted. Lived there till I was 16 or 17, then moved up to Texas. But like I said, grew up hunting down there. Family land, private access. Did that my entire life. Always kind of loved it more than everybody else I knew. Looked forward to it more than everybody else. When we got in high school and everything, people started playing sports. I actually quit high school sports because I didn't like missing the fall and not being able to hunt. And man, just fell in love with it. Trying to figure out how I could spend every second in the woods and trying to expand that time. Really, just the October through January season wasn't good enough for me. When I discovered that January through February, March, you could do some pig hunting and start looking for sheds and, turkey hunting, and just learning summer patterns, cameras, stuff like that. I just became immersed in it, obsessed with it, and it hasn't slowed down since. I thought I would kind of maybe taper out, but every year I try to spend more time. I'm starting to do a little bit more traveling, getting to experience other areas and different species to hunt. Moved up to Texas. I guess it's been 7 or 8 years now, and have enjoyed getting to hunt Texas, hunting some of the public around here. I've pretty much become inclusive bow hunter, but I still do gun hunt a good bit. There's normally a mid-season gun hunt I'll go on, and we've done pretty good on that the last couple of years. But just like you, man, any chance I can be in the woods, that's kind of what my life revolves around.
Yeah, I mean that's how you got to do it to make the most of every opportunity, for sure. And I know we've spent several hours at this point this evening together, and had a bunch of conversations about hunting and public land, private land, all that kind of stuff. And, it's always those conversations that aren't recorded that I'm like, man, this would be so
Yeah.
awesome if we got that. But, and not to say we got to repeat everything, but I know one thing that we talked about is, kind of the mindsets behind public land, private land. Some guys are really passionate about one or the other. Some guys
sure.
hate one or the other, and I feel like you have a really good stance on it because you have experience hunting both of them, and it's, there's, as we were talking earlier, there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah.
So.
To talk about that, I was kind of forced into public land. Got out of high school. I had moved from my home state. It's no longer Louisiana. I was in Texas. So with that, I was away from family, access, permission land. I didn't know anybody. I had access to one small little place, but it wasn't great hunting, and I wasn't scratching the itch how I wanted to. I wasn't being able to get out there like I wanted to, and I said, well, I guess I got to hunt public for a little while until I can afford a lease or something like that, and started doing my research, and definitely got a piece of humble pie the first couple years. I'm still learning every time I go out. But that first, I'll tell you a story. The first time we ever hunted public, my hunting partner that I do most of my hunting with, we literally had a llama come in. And I remember telling my hunting partner, I was like, I'm not doing this. This is the nightmare of public land you always hear about. And we got better, and to this day, if I could go lease a property, I would. I had a lease a few years ago. I go on some private hunts with people that invite me, but I've fallen in love with the accessibility of public. It's something we talked about today. You're not going to lose it. Theoretically, you're not going to lose it. We've all had those heartbreakers, awesome deer lease, awesome hunting club, that someone came in and bought, or you lost permission to hunt it for no certain reason. And man, that's rough. So when you start really researching and understanding the literally hundreds of thousands of acres that you have access to, an hour from your house, 30 minutes from your house. I hunted a piece of public this morning before this. That's 20 minutes from my house. It's not the best hunting, but it's my land and it's your land. You have the right to go hunt it just as much as I do. And I hate when guys get in this fighting contest. Well, he hunts public, so he thinks he's a better hunter, or he hunts private, so it's not as hard. I've hunted private land deer that are just as hard to kill as a public land deer. Trying to find a specific buck, a mature buck, to kill on private can literally put gray hairs on your head.
Yeah.
Finding a deer to kill on public can put gray hairs on your head. So I hate the fight back and forth between that. But I have embraced being a quote-unquote public land hunter, just because I like to explore. I like to scout new areas. People give me a hard time because I'll get zoned in on an area, have some great hunts, and then they'll ask me, you going back there this weekend? I'm like, nah, I'm going to go check out this other WMA. Well, why are you doing that? Because I enjoy the search. We're hunters. We're hunting for something. I like hunting for that next white oak ridge, that next creek bottom to hunt, and just the accessibility of it, the vast amount of it. People say all the time, Texas doesn't have a lot of public land. It does if you do your research. It doesn't have as much as Oregon does, but anybody can go out there and hunt it. And if you put the work in and the effort in, you can be successful on it. In the last couple of years, I've been blessed. We've been hunting public for either 3 or 4 years. I've killed 2 great bucks on it. I've missed a couple really good bucks that we can get into. And it's out there to go do for anyone. So I hate when I hear people say, I don't have somewhere to hunt. Everybody's got somewhere to hunt. If you have private access, go hunt it. If you have public access, go hunt it. Do either or, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
But there's something different about public. It's a level playing field, and when you are almost handicapped, you're in the deer's backyard, and you have nothing going for you. They know every nook and cranny. They know what they're supposed to be smelling. They know that acorns are natural. It's not a pile of corn, and I have nothing wrong with that. You want a bait, that's fine. I've killed a lot of deer over bait. That's completely fine with me. But when you're in that element, you have to hunt natural sources, natural funnels. It sharpens your edge as a hunter, and you learn a lot. That first couple seasons we hunted, it was pretty frustrating.
Yeah.
But when you get success, it's sweet.
Yeah. You're earning it more,
Yeah.
or you feel like you
Yeah.
are, and rightfully so. You definitely get what you put into it too. And to build on what you said about Texas not having, quote unquote, Texas not having public land,
Yeah.
like you said, they do. There's this misconception, and I'm guilty of falling into it, of how, well, it's so densely hunted. There's so many guys that hunt Texas public land. Is it really worth my time,
Right.
and everything like that? And if you, for lack of a better term, if you hunt superficially out there, and this is coming from a guy who's looking from the outside in, because I'm not a public land hunter, at least here in Texas, and from the outside looking in, yes, if you hunt the edges, if you hunt the easy spots, those are the spots that there's going to be more people at. But I know you dive pretty far
Yeah.
back in there, and not to get into any of your spots or your secrets or anything
no.
like that, but you put the work in to go back in there and find those little honey holes that are hard to get to, but there's more reward in the end. So
Yeah, when I first started doing it, I laughed thinking about some of my purchases or game plans. My hunting partner would really laugh about it too. Brian, you know him. He's one of those guys. He's just like, if he's got 3 arrows, he's good for the year. He makes his gear work, and I admire it about him. Like, he doesn't have the best gear, but I was always that one. Okay, if I can get a saddle, that's going to be the ticket. Okay, if I can get better boots, that's the ticket. If I can get drawn instead of walk in public, that's the ticket. And I've learned in the last 3 to 4 years, it's about the boots on the ground. It's the guy that's willing to go that last half mile, cross that last creek, go in a little bit earlier, walk in 2 miles instead of 1 mile to be able to get wind access right. It's just about hard work. And I will say this too, the pressure on public land, it's different, because I've hunted 500-600 acre deer leases with 10 guys hunting it, and that's getting more pressure than the 30,000 acre place I hunt that has probably 1,000 guys hunting it, because it's about the access. I would say after the first mile, you lose 70% of your hunters. Most of your guys in Texas are not going to go past a mile. And there's places where I've gotten to that I've never seen another boot track in. And then there's places that I've watched 10 guys walk from their truck, and I've had great hunts literally 500 yards from the parking spot. It's about adapting to the deer, There's an old saying, I was bad at this when I first started hunting public. There's an old saying, hunt where the deer are, not where you think they should be. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I remember walking past good sign, being like, man, this is a good spot, but I bet everybody hunts here. And one day I was just naive enough to be like, I'm just going to hunt here because there's rubs here, there's scrapes here, there's obviously a funnel. I'm like, Jesse, you're making this a lot more difficult than you need to. The deer are here for a reason, just hunt it.
yeah,
So it's a challenge. You learn how to hunt it. Just like you got to learn how to hunt a certain private piece. It's like the place you were hunting this year. You had to get it dialed in this year and figure out how that property had to work. You kind of got it zoned out, figured out now. You go on a new WMA, you figure out, you got to learn how the deer work that property.
yeah,
And it always makes it adventurous. I mean, you just never know what you're going to get into on public land.
right.
So it's addicting. It's fun. And it's always there. It's always accessible.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's your place.
Yeah,
it's
it's yours.
Yeah,
And guys I've had run-ins, guys, you're hunting my spot or that's my area. You want to be polite about it, nice about it, but you have just as much every right to it as I do. And it's learning how to work together on stuff. When I first started hunting, I was super secretive, Didn't show anybody pictures. I didn't see anything. That spot's not good. I'm pretty open now. I'll tell guys, because if I'm honest with the guy and say, hey, that bottom's pretty good, you should go hunt it. I've learned guys will tell me, hey, well, that ridge is really good, you should go hunt it. And if you meet the right guys, you can work together as a team. And it's public gets a bad rap, and if you hunt it right, it's a great opportunity.
yeah,
You deal with the same stuff that you deal with on private, but it's just a little bit different game.
yeah.
So
So talking about that different game, let's talk a little bit about some of the gear that
Okay.
you utilize to make the most out of every opportunity, and what you have to work with out there, because obviously public land is different than private in that you don't have necessarily preset
Presets, yeah.
stuff out there, or can't bait like you can on private, and
Right.
and all that kind of stuff. What do you use to, like I said, make the most out of every opportunity?
Right. So, um, my first mistake when I started hunting public, uh, I started off my first year ever hunted public. I said, well, what the heck, I'm going to go for it. And I decided that was when I was going to start traditional bow hunting too. We can get into that more. But I typically hunt with a stick bow. I'm starting to hunt with compound some now. I shoot a Hoyt Torix, and then I shoot a couple different laminated bows. But my first year I hunted out of a Lone Wolf Assault or Alpha. Your classic, every public land hunter.
Right.
4 sticks. And that was great for a couple years. Enjoyed it. I probably killed more deer out of that stand than any other stand. And then I got into the saddle craze. That was another one of those gear purchases. I'm like, if I can just get in a saddle, I'll be able. That's what I need. Hunted from the saddle for a while. Loved it. I still utilize it. And then this year we started incorporating, not to my credit, Brian started doing some ground hunting with ghillie suits.
Mm-hmm.
We started playing with that, man. We were really impressed by how much we could get away with. The mobility of it, You're in a tree stand and you realize, I picked the wrong fork in a trail. You got to take down a stand, move it. You're in a ghillie suit. It's the deer in the clear. You move over there and get reset up. So when I first started, I was trying to figure out what my setup and my gear was. I've just developed a toolbox now.
Right.
If you ask me, textbook hunt, Jesse, what do you want to do? I want to carry in a lock-on, because no matter what anybody says, a lock-on is more comfortable than a saddle. Saddles are great, but 3 or 4 hours in one, you're going to be sick of standing on a tiny platform.
Yeah.
You can't shoot 360 in them, like some guys say. You can't shoot 360 in a lock-on, especially not with a 62-inch bow. That weak side shot's tough. But a saddle does put you in certain trees that you can't get a lock-on in. So anyway, my textbook hunt would be carry my lock-on in. I still have my Lone Wolf, but I spent some money this year and I bought the Lone Wolf Custom. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a newer tree stand that the previous owners of Lone Wolf came out, started a separate company, and they built just an incredible Lone Wolf .5. It's I want to say it's 6 pounds for a stand. The sticks are like a pound. So I carry that in with 4 sticks. 2 of them have 8ers. The areas we hunt, most you're getting is about 15, 16 feet. That's my go-to. If I get to a certain area where I know I'm going in mobile, I'm picking out a new area to hunt. I don't have, because we have presets on public land too. Like the couple of my bucks have been shot out of the same tree every year. I'm gonna hunt those. The second week of November, I'm gonna be in that tree.
Right.
I leave my bow hook in it. It's a preset.
Yeah.
Other than the stand. If I'm going into a new area, I'm gonna take that saddle because it's so light. I can wear it in. I can hang either like a wild edge step, something like that. I could be up in a tree. Or if I get some of these weird Texas trees that are leaning and crazy, I'll grab that saddle. And then if there's times late season when our trees are just barren and you just look like a sore thumb sitting in that tree, we've started utilizing that ghillie suit.
Mm-hmm.
And between those 3, pretty much can handle anything that the woods throw at us and not be miserably carrying a certain amount of weight in.
Yeah.
It's funny, I look back at some of the stuff I used to bring in on private land hunts, and I'm bringing in less on public because I wanted to get my pack weight down so much. I used to bring in all these things, big cameras, and now I've got it down to pretty much a backpack. I do use a good frame pack, a lightweight frame pack, and we bone and quarter out all of our deer. We don't drag them out because, like you said, a lot of our stuff we're 1.5 miles deep. We're going to clean them right on the ground, put them in the backpack in a game bag like they do with elk hunting or something.
Yeah.
Carry them out. That's probably my most vital piece of equipment. Got to have a good pack. And then good binos, rangefinder. Man, try to avoid bringing anything else in. It just gets too heavy, because it is public land. So there's been times, you go into a spot 1.5 miles and there's a guy already hanging in that tree and you're plan B real fast. You don't want to be carrying 35, 40 pounds on your back. So
Right.
learn to be mobile and take the punches that it throws at you. But yeah, between those 3 stands, either one of my bows, a good pack, good pair of boots, and in Texas, a lot of times snake boots early season. That's the gear you need. And we're camping a lot. Most time I don't have a place to stay, so most of these WMAs, we're sleeping in the truck or in a tent. So it's kind of the gear I run.
Yeah.
Started investing this year in some better camo clothing. Learned the quality of a good base layer. Me and you were talking about some camo today. But yeah, that's it, gear-wise.
Yeah, awesome. So a lot of different rabbit trails and directions we could go off of this, and not to say we won't try to hit some of them, but another thing that at least from what I've seen, you do put forth an effort to try and document a lot of your experiences out there, as you know, in the form of photos, videos, whatever it might be. Tell us a little bit about that. And on top of being a public land hunter, a traditional bow hunter, you're also trying to self-film everything.
Yeah.
Talk about how that incorporates into everything.
Yeah, I'll say public land's hard, traditional bow hunting's hard. None of them are as hard as self-film. It's a nightmare sometimes, man. I mean, just I don't know how some guys get away with a cameraman, just the movement and everything. But when I first started, I was carrying in, I want to say it was a Canon Rebel. Don't quote me. I don't know cameras. It's a big camera, and it was too heavy. I was setting up a tree arm every time, and I missed out on a lot of opportunities because I was fooling with the camera. Then I was like, no, I'm not filming at all. But I like going back to be able to relive. Another huge thing for being a bow hunter, having some type of footage of where that deer was standing, where it ran to, is huge. So then I went to just a little handy cam. Had some issues with that, battery-wise. Just never had the right batteries, cold weather. So I've kind of settled on the phones have gotten so good.
Yeah.
The little screw-in camera mount phone. I'll freehand film a lot. Try to have whatever the most recent Android or whatever it is with a better phone. And that's what I'm shooting like my B-roll with. And then I've gotten to the point on my shots. I don't mess with camera anymore. I wear a GoPro Hero 8 Black Edition on my head, kick it a little bit sideways, and I have it on one button mode. When I see an animal in front of me, which most times I'm public, I'm going to shoot it. It's one click, and it's going to get me good footage to where I can share the experience. I'm going to be able to know where the deer was, and then I'll go back to B-roll with the phone and everything, but pretty much phone, a GoPro, and I will carry in the handy cam sometimes, camp footage, stuff like that, but GoPro's a game changer for me self-filming wise. Just don't got to worry about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've barely touched it a couple times just throughout the conversation about the traditional bow hunting side of everything.
Yep.
That's a whole nother challenge on top, like we just talked about, a whole nother challenge on top of everything else that you're doing. Yeah. But tell us why you're a trad guy, and why you love that, and how all that plays in for you.
So I'll tell a little bit of the backstory because it's a cool story. So like I said, in South Louisiana, everybody hunts. There's a difference between a hunter and a woodsman. Somebody that just hunts, and then somebody that lives that passionate, obsessed life of hunting. I remember when I was like 14 years old, I was going to my grandfather's house. My grandfather's probably other than my dad, the biggest influence in my life. Taught me the basics of hunting. Here's a scrape, here's a rub line, things like that. I went over to his house, and there was a gentleman at his house. His name's Oscar Long, and he's Cajun from South Louisiana, and man, if it walks, crawls, swims, he can catch it, kill it, trap it. Just talented guy. Yeah. Grew up in the woods, and I met him, shook his hand and everything, and I remember my grandfather saying, "Jesse, Mr. Oscar hunts with a traditional bow." What do you mean a traditional bow? He said, "A long bow." I said, like one of the Indian bows, like cowboy and Indian bows. And he's like, "Yeah, I didn't even know you could hunt with that." Like I was like, "No one hunts with that." You know, I'm thinking of like the little suction cup bows we had when we were kids that stick to the wall. And he started telling me about him hunting with it, and how close you got to get to the deer, and how he makes his arrows and all this stuff. And I'm geeking out. I'm like, that's so cool. So he invited me. He said, "Hey, next time you get off school or whatever, or you get a time, give me a call. Get your papa to call me, and you come over and shoot my bow." And I said, "Oh, I would love to." So we set it up like 2 weeks later. And it was like you know, it was like the first time you see a deer from a tree stand, you're like, man, I love this. Like, I want to do this. The first time I drew back a stick bow and I hit anchor and I watched that arrow fly, didn't even hit where I was aiming. It was just, I fell in love with it. You know, I love compounds, shoot them all the time, but you know, you don't get to watch that arrow fly. You don't get the relationship with the bow. You know, if you mess up shooting a trad bow, you're not blaming it on your cams. You're not blaming it on your rest. If you mess up, it's because of you. You know.
Yeah.
You take the factor of the bow out, and so I bought a bow. I was like, I'm a stick bow hunter now, traditional bow hunter. Well, I didn't know what I was doing. I was like, I shoot a 60-pound bow. Went out and bought a 55-pound recurve. I was 14. That blew my shoulder out. I couldn't hit anything. I was like, this is not me. I can't do this. So unstrung it, didn't think anything about it. Through high school, college, killed a lot of deer with compound, and in no way felt like I had conquered it. I just was like, man, I want to shoot that trad bow again. So when I started hunting public, I was like, hey, let's just jump in, you know, deep as we can. Let's start mobile hunting, traditional bow hunting, and public land bow hunting all at a time. It's a terrible decision. And I totally nerd out on it. I build bows all the way from an Osage tree stave, build bows, make my own strings, build my own arrows. We'll shoot wood arrows. I shoot carbons on my actual hunting bow just because they're so durable. Fixed blade broadheads, process feathers from turkeys I kill. Those are my fletchings. It's just fun, you know. It's like fly tying. Like you get into fly fishing, you're gonna eventually tie flies. It just puts you in a connection with it. So I started doing that 2 or 3 years ago, and it's been a roller coaster. I probably didn't put as much time into shooting as I should have, and I had some heartbreak moments missing a couple good deer with it. But I will say this, like, you miss a deer with compound, it's just like, man, it just ruins everything. Yeah. You hang up a stick bow, you kind of just laugh and like, I'm doing it the hardest way possible. It bothers you, but it doesn't bother you as much. And, you know, it's fun. You know, just slinging arrows. You become a kid again. You remember the first time you got a bow? Mm-hmm. You in the backyard and you're like, this is a blast. You know, you saw me today. Like, I'll go out in the woods and a squirrel's a hunt again. A rabbit's a hunt again. Shooting a pine cone on the ground's fun again. And it's just, it kind of consumes you. And it's not for everybody. Some people love it. And I go back and forth. I went hardcore trad for a little while. And I don't even like being associated with that because some people kind of turn their nose up and think they're better. It's just the way you choose to do things, you know. Some people fish for bass, some people fish for catfish. Some people hunt with stick bow, some people hunt with compound. And I went a little bit too deep in it. I've come back some. I've started hunting with compound again, and I've enjoyed it. I went to Colorado last year, took my compound, had a blast hunting elk. But my heart's at traditional bow hunting. It's fun. It's what I think about. It's what I enjoy doing. And sooner or later, I'm gonna get it figured out. Yeah, we start putting some deer down with it. But yeah, I encourage anybody to try it at least once. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
So to get into some specific hunting stories, some hunting adventures, I think a good one to start with is one that you just mentioned, and you had a trip up to Colorado last year on an elk hunt. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yep. So I kind of had a goal mindset of I consider like the big three to me. I want to hunt elk, I want to hunt mule deer, and I want to hunt antelope. I said I'm going for the elk first. That's what I'm going to do. And I started reading stats and everything. Takes the average elk hunter, I think, 3 to 4 years to kill an elk. So I told myself when I'm 25, I'm going to go on my first elk hunt. I'm going to kill one by the time I'm 30. Then I'm going to do mule deer for the next 5 years, antelope for the next 5 years. I'm going to get it figured out. So my first year I was going to go was the year I turned 25. I was headed to Idaho. COVID happened, shut things down, travel got shut down. Nightmare, total bummer. Ended up deciding to go hunt Colorado. Had some intel from a good buddy. We didn't go in fully blind. I wish I could take credit and say we just were master e-scouters and everything. We had some intel. We knew where some elk were at. And I'm a big hiker, backpacker, and everything, so I wasn't scared of that. So last year we took off on a roughly 16-mile hike into Colorado backcountry. Hiked it all the way in, heavy packs, everything. bow hunting, over the counter, and it was everything I dreamed of, man. I mean, living out of a tent we were there, we hit the trailhead Saturday morning and came out, I think, Sunday the next week. So living off MREs, granola bars, all that kind of stuff, catching wild trout. So we hiked in, and we had the best beginner's luck ever. You know, the night we put up our tents, we had bulls bugling. We had seen mule deer. We had cows come into camp, and we're like, we got this. We practically had the elk in the game bags ready to go. First morning, I think it was the first morning, called in a ragcorn spike. Came in, mewing at us, just crazy. And we're like, oh man, we know what we're doing, you know? So can't shoot a spike in Colorado, no big deal. Next day, worked a herd buell. First time I had a bull answer me. I think we got some footage of that I'll share with you. Bull screams down from the bottom. We're like, this is just like primos, you know. Big bull is like, we know what we're doing. Third day, got in on a bull that was coming back to bedding and worked him for a little bit. And then it was like shut off overnight. We went from feeling like we were surrounded by bulls and having the hunt of our lifetime to wondering if there was elk anywhere on this mountain.
Yeah.
And we had a great trip. We hunted hard for 7 days. Found some wallows, found a moose shed, had an awesome encounter with a moose. Just completely everything I'd want to be, except for the elk hunt kind of died at the end on the last day. Realized just how smart those elk are. Worked the bull. He came in quiet, never bugled, and never saw him, man. Took like 10 steps and he blew out. He had creeped in on us. Don't know. He wasn't a big bull, but he was a good over-the-counter Colorado bull.
Yeah.
Don't know if he just wasn't a dominant bull, so he's quiet. Didn't want to get himself in a fight. And he blew out. But, man, we hit that trailhead the next morning, and I told myself for the rest of my life, I will not miss 1 year and not be in the mountains. It's just, as much as I love hunting whitetail, you know, it's a different game.
Yeah.
But I was equally as excited to get back and jump in a deer stand.
Yeah.
So that was a fun trip.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, jumping back into that deer stand, I know we'll start with the painful side, because you already mentioned at the beginning of the episode you had a couple missed opportunities, missed shots that you'd share with us. So let's hear about the ugly part.
All right. So you want just this year or some of the over the last couple of years?
Well, whatever comes to your mind, whatever you want to share.
I'll give you a couple of them. So, the second year we hunted public. The first year, I don't know if we killed anything the first year. I had some opportunities, just hadn't really learned what we were doing yet. Second year we killed a couple of deer, and it was mid-November. Had found this ridge. Kind of goes back to my story about hunting where the deer are, not where you think they should be.
Right.
I was going way far back on this unit. Going way back there. No one else hunts back there. Like the third time I hunted it, I was like, man, I always see deer there. Why are there always deer there? And I hadn't seen any deer in the back. I'm like, well, you dummy. Why don't you hunt where you're seeing deer at?
Yeah.
So right where I'd blown these does out, I hung a stand. Only like 2 hours left. And those does came back and fed. I said, well, I'm going to leave my stand up. I'll hunt in the morning. Went back that next morning. Slow morning. And I think it was probably 10:15 or so. And one thing I will say that I've known this ever since I've hunted, just because my grandfather taught me this. That 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, midday is an awesome time to kill big bucks. And it was probably 10:30, 11 o'clock, and I grunted a couple of times. I had a buck stand up about 70 yards from me, and I could see him to this day. He wasn't a monster, but he was a great public land buck. Came in not full run to me, but he was coming in to whip my butt.
Yeah.
I just grunted in his backyard. He came in with that whole sideways thing, you know, where they're carrying their head sideways. And man, I turned and looked at that stick bow, and I was like, oh, I'm so stupid. Why do I have this stick bow? He came in at 15 yards, and I drew back. I hit anchor, and I'm a gap shooter. I don't instinct shoot. I reference the tip of my arrow.
Mm-hmm.
So I know, okay, tip of my arrow needs to be X amount of inches at this distance. I hit anchor, and I gave him the classic meh, and I've never seen a deer blow out so fast. Just spun and took off. And I said, you know what? I'm never bleeding at a deer again. Fast forward the next year, had another buck come in. Wasn't as big of a buck, and I was like, I got to stop him. I bleated at him, blew out. And I swore to myself, I said, I'm never stopping a deer again. Twice in a row. I don't know if it's public, they're skittish. I don't know if stick bow range 15 yards and it startles them. So fast forward to this year, I had a really good 9-point come in. Hunting a little creek bottom. I'm a big transition guy. Some guys are really big on hunting acorns. I'll hunt acorns quite a bit. Early season, it's like hunting over a feeder. You find the right oak tree, you're going to be on deer.
Right.
Because I can normally only hunt weekends, I can't consistently stay on the acorn crop. I'm big on funnels and transitions, and I hunted this little creek bottom that had bedding and pinch point funnel, and hunted it that afternoon. Had a great 9-point come out on the trail on me, and steady walk, and drew back, let him keep walking. I hit him mid shoulder, left and right, but high. I couldn't really tell, and it looked like I made a good shot. I texted my buddy and said, I think I just killed a really good buck. So gave it probably 30 minutes, took my stand down, went back to the truck, dropped everything. Came back and found my arrow, and it smelled like deer fat. No blood on it. I was like, ooh, that oily, that's not good. Just text Brian. Maybe text Brian, I don't remember. So I'm going to sit down and I'm going to walk to where I last saw him because I watched him run like 60 yards and just learn to do that, go to the last place you saw him. So I walked like 60 yards. At this point, it's pitch black dark. And grab my arrow. I go like 60 yards. And I said, I'm going to sit here because I know I don't have a double lung shot. I got to give this deer a couple hours. And I'm not walking back to the truck.
Right.
So I sit down, and on my headlight, you have to click through all the settings. I'm on like 150 lumens. And this goes from like 150, 350, 600, 1,000. So you got to click through them. So I click through it, and I light up the whole area like 1,000 lumens on accident. And when I do that, the buck stands up like 40 yards from me. And he just looks at me, and he's a good 9-point. No blood on him, but he had been bedded there. I literally watched him turn around, and he just looked where I hit him, walked off just fine, went about 60 yards and blew. Deer was totally fine. He didn't die. There was no blood in his bed. But that was a heartbreaker.
Yeah.
So that was one of the bad of this year. And then I showed you some footage earlier. I can get that to you too. I had one of those moments when you know it's over before it even begins. I was on a little transition area that I like to hunt in November. It's a consistent area. We call it the zoo because I hunted this place 2 years ago, and I kept texting my cousin Brian saying, I'm going to get out at 11. I'm going to get out at 12. And I just kept seeing deer. And we ended up, by the time I hunted, I saw like 24 deer on public, which was just an insane moment.
Wow.
We're calling that the zoo. So I'm in the zoo, and deer always funnel from the top. Does come from the bottom, the bucks come from the top. Normally the does come right here, the bucks will meet them. It's still early November, so I didn't expect the bucks to be it just left me doed up when they're kind of locked down, right?
Right.
So I hear deer coming behind me, and I turn over my right shoulder, and I'm looking, and I see a doe, and she's got that steady walk, tail up, and I'm like, she might have a buck behind her. So I spin around and I turn over my left shoulder, which was a mistake because my bow's hanging on my right side. I turn over my left shoulder, and there's a good mature oak tree like 30 yards behind me. And when I tell you I could see a left main beam on one side and a right main beam on the other, I mean, it's, what do you think that deer is, 18 inches wide?
At least, yeah.
Solid deer, 140-inch deer. And I could see him on both sides of the tree, and I'm like, So I'm all the way turned this way. He's on coming to this side, and my bow's on this side. So I got to spin 180. Then I got to make that awkward shot where your chest is in front of the tree. You got to try to like draw. And I kind of just laughed. I was like, this ain't happening. He's already at 18 yards. The doe's underneath me. And I click the GoPro. I'm trying to get to the bow. And I'm watching him between my legs. I'm watching him underneath my platform. And I'm not even close to where I need to be. And I watch him do the classic. He sees my steps, then he's like, doom, 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 and then he just pegs me. And I'm like, that's all she wrote. And you see in the video, he kind of gave me that little head shake and took one more step, and then he just blew out. And a buddy of mine killed him 2 weeks later, just a hammer of a deer. So at that point in time, I'm pretty low deer season. I'm like, man, I've missed out on 2 good deer. But classic Thanksgiving week rolls in. Normally some family will hunt with me. We'll still hunt in public, but there's a small gun season in there. And I've been pretty consistent the last couple years. Killed 3 bucks in the last 3 years on that week. 2 of them were really good bucks. And hunted this little ridge and textbook. Buck came through chasing the doe, 33 yards, and took a shot, and he's a good public buck. So my season was salvaged. I got to put my Texas tag on a good deer and was happy with it. Ended up shooting a couple hogs and some other stuff, but it was a good season. But typical season for me.
The challenges of public land hunting.
Public land, yeah, stick bow, everything, but it's fun, man. It's what we live for.
Absolutely.
So
I wanted to ask this, just came to my mind as you're talking there and talking about these deer. Do you, having hunted both private and public, do you feel like the deer on public are truly more skittish than private land whitetails?
yes and no. You'll never meet a more skittish deer than an adult doe at a feeder. I mean, I've had bucks at feeders and not even try to draw on them because of a doe. You know, I would tell people all the time, a doe is not the hardest to see, but the hardest deer in the woods to kill. You get a buck in there underneath you, once he's surveyed the area, he's pretty chill.
Yeah.
And you can kill him. A doe, I don't know what happens to them, but they're looking up in trees. They're looking for the boogeyman to jump out and get them. So it's hit or miss on public. Late season public deer are skittish. They've been pounded by hunters for 3 months.
Yeah, I was gonna say it probably has to do with pressure too, but
They figured out. But an early season deer on public, because most of our WMAs around here, unless they're getting pig hunted, no one's out there.
right.
I've been hunting a WMA for the last 3 weekends. I shot a pig a couple weekends ago. I haven't seen another human in 3 weeks out there. So for 9 months out of the year, these deer are relaxed. So that first couple weeks of October, those deer are really you can pattern them, and they're really relaxed. It all depends on the private, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
Deer aren't stupid. They know where those ground blinds are. They know where those tree stands are. So kind of depends on the deer. The answer to your question is yes, they're both hard to kill. I would never look at a private land hunter and say, oh, you got it so easy. There's pros and cons. You know? The pros of private land hunting is you get to be selective. Most of the time you can run cameras. You know what you're going after. The con is, you know, if they're not on the food source, if they're not bedding on your private property, you have 300 acres, that's all you can hunt. You know, if I see a deer that's bedding 100 yards away, I can go 100 yards. If he's a mile away, I can go a mile away on public. It's just each hunter has their different battles. So I don't know how to answer that. I think it's either one.
No,
Depends on your deer.
I think you did answer it. It's just it depends.
None of them are easy to kill.
No, it depends on pressure. I don't know. It's just you hear, again, outsider kind of looking into the public land scene, but you know, going off of what you hear from the negatives of public land, are, you know, it's too crowded. The deer are more skittish. The deer are harder to find. They're harder to hunt. again,
Yeah.
I think it depends on pressure. It depends on if you're hunting those super
Mhm.
pressured areas, or if you're, and again, not to talk bad about anybody else, but how good of a hunter you are
Right.
also plays a part.
I think it's like I said earlier. I probably just go a little bit more than everybody else. It's about boots on the ground. You know, the best the best crappie fisherman is the guy who crappie fishes the most.
Right.
You know, it's who puts that effort in. Uh, it's just about being out there. You can look at it and say, you know, you could have tagged out this year, but finding that one on private that you wanted to shoot is just as hard as me finding that one buck on public that I can get at 20 yards.
Yeah.
I learned to accept it like this. Deer, deer on public land don't know they're public land deer.
Yeah.
They're not like their fawns aren't born and they're like, now look, we're public land deer. We can't travel. We can't move. If I'm hunting a spot on public and I don't see deer, I'm not going to say, well, it's public land. I didn't see any deer. I just wasn't where those deer moved. They got to get up. They got to drink water. They got to feed. And they got to sleep. And during the rut, they got to breed. It's about being in the right tree where they're going to do that, you know. Deer aren't on public land saying, we're not eating today because we're public land deer.
Right.
There's an oak tree they're feeding under. Just finding that tree that they're feeding at.
Right.
You know. Sometimes it can be tougher for those deer to hunt a deer that knows we could wait 20 minutes after light and hear Sam unzip that blind and go feed at that feeder afterwards than it is trying to find a deer on daylight on public. It's about luck sometimes.
Yeah.
That old saying, better be lucky than good. Put the hard work in, pray that you get an opportunity, and try to make the best of it.
Yeah. For our listeners and our viewers, if you're watching the video, I don't think I've had this season a conversation with you, Jesse, about hunting, and you not talked about how I could have tagged out or how I should have shot deer this year.
I'd get home and I'd watch the YouTube videos, and some of them were later, and we had talked at church or whatever, and I know. But he'd put up, I want to wait and let my wife shoot it, and I'd just be like, this idiot, man, shoot that deer. You know, I'm sitting there in a bow stand freezing, and I got a spike working to me, and I'm shaking. I'm like, I'm about to kill this spike, and you're passing. It's how you want to hunt. There's no right or wrong, you know.
Yeah.
I'm never going to look at somebody and say, you hunt compound, you're wrong.
Yeah.
You hunt a private, you're wrong. Each their own, what you want to do, you know?
Yeah.
We're too small of a community to be fighting amongst each other, you
Mm-hmm.
know? People talk about all the time, well, if we're gonna keep hunting alive, we need more hunters. That's not true, because the hunters are such a small population. You know, we'll never have enough hunters to be a swing vote, to keep public access or private lands to be able to hunt. It's about representing the hunters that are in existence better. And if me and you are fighting over who's a better hunter or how you hunt, it's doing nothing for our community. If we're truly hunters and we really love what we do and we're really obsessed with it, we're going to get along, we're going to shake hands, slap each other on the back and say, good job, man. You know, I want the spike I kill on public land with a stick bow, I want you to be just excited for me as what I would be if you got your target 5-year-old buck.
Yeah.
You know, why are you in the game? What are you obsessed with doing?
Yeah.
It's hunting a mature deer too tough for me. No, I mean, I go after them. I mean, I'm picky sometimes. In Texas, it's a wonderful thing. Some people hate it. That 13-inch rule is a great rule to have.
Yeah.
So you're not going to see a lot of under 3-year-old bucks that are not 13 inches.
Mm-hmm.
And I've watched it make our state better. Just why do you play the game?
Yeah, exactly.
So.
And I'll just, because I know we have a lot of listeners with this podcast that are outside of the state of Texas, maybe have never hunted Texas. The 13-inch rule from Texas Parks and Wildlife is basically, it's county specific, I believe, for the most part. But so some counties it's not applicable, but most counties you're allowed to kill two bucks. One of them has to be a mature buck. They label it as a deer with an inside spread of 13 inches or greater. And the other one has to be an unbranched antlered
spike.
buck. So yeah, spike or 3-point. You know, can't be a fork or anything like that. And you're right. A lot of hunters, I've heard a lot complain about, man, how am I supposed to know if it's 13 inches in the field? Which they have the ear rule. You know, if the deer's looking at you and it's past the ears, it's greater than 13 inches. If it's inside the ears, no go.
It's a good estimate. It's not perfect.
Yeah, it's not perfect. It's the best you can judge on the hoof, but you're spot on. It's yes, some people look at it as a stupid rule, and there are instances with certain deer where it might be hurting you. You might have a cull buck that's a mature buck
Yep,
that is
absolutely.
just, his genetics are, he's a narrow deer. He might be 9 inches wide and have all this
14
mass
inch
and
G2s and be a hammer.
be a 140-inch deer with all
Yep.
this mass, but he's only 9 inches wide. Um, that, and in that sense, with a deer like that, it would hurt somebody. But for the most part, you're right. It's made our state better because it's kept guys from shooting those up and comers, those 2-3-year-olds that, given another year, would be more in their prime. And
Coming from a state like Louisiana, I mean, the saying in Louisiana, if it's brown, it's down. We get 8 tags in Louisiana.
Wow.
Well, I don't know if it's this way anymore since I've moved. We used to get 4 bucks, 4 does, no antler restrictions.
wow,
And that's why you didn't see a lot of big deer coming out of Louisiana.
Mhm.
Now they've started doing some antler restrictions and stuff from what I'm aware of, or management programs. And every year I'm starting to see more deer come out of Louisiana. Now, one thing I will say Texas did a great job at is that unbranched rule. That's tough to try to get a kid involved in hunting and be like, sorry, buddy, you can't shoot that deer. He's not 13 inches. That unbranched rule is good because it lets every kid shoot that first spike,
yeah,
you know? And I'm not one of those ones that says a spike would never be a good deer. Spike can be a great deer later on. But I think they did a good job at that to where, you can take your son out or you can take a nephew out and they're going to have an opportunity at their first deer and not have to shoot a mature buck. But I've definitely watched it in the last 4 or 5 years, 13-inch rule, improve our deer quality.
yeah. I completely agree. Well, man, I've enjoyed this conversation. It's been good to sit down and talk with you and hear a little bit about the public landowner.
Get you out there with me sometime.
Yeah, I know. I haven't done it, and
Yeah.
I know in past I've educated myself more because I've been that guy that's been, man, it's too crowded. I don't want to mess with other people out there and whatnot. But I've been privileged to have a private piece pretty consistently over the years, and I'm fortunate with that. But yeah, for sure, it's definitely something that's piquing my interest, and
sure.
it's like I go to freaking Montana and hunt public land up there to hunt pronghorn. Why not hunt whitetail here?
Why not?
So
Especially, I hunt public in Oklahoma a good bit. Oklahoma's some great public land hunting. It's fun. You're gonna run into your headaches and stuff, but it's just a different ballgame. It's like we were talking about trail cameras. Because I don't run trail cameras. Number one, they get stolen. Number one, like I said, I'm a baby. I'm like, I can hunt a spot and have a great hunt, and then I get my trail camera card and see that somebody was in that, walked past my camera the day before, and I'll pull my stand and be like, I don't want to hunt here. But it's fun because you have no idea what's about to walk out.
Yeah.
It might be a llama, like that first time we had on public, or it might be like that deer that came under me this year, 140-inch deer that, you'll brag about for the rest of your life. You stick that.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly.
It's an obsession.
It is.
Yep.
In so many ways. Well, man, thanks for coming out here. I know, like I said at the beginning, we're going to be doing some stuff with you, at least on our pages, with some content here in the coming weeks. This podcast won't be it. Yep. We got a video in the works, which will be pretty cool. I'm looking forward to that. But appreciate you coming out and spend a few hours with us this afternoon and recording videos, podcasts, and it's been fun hanging out. So.
Better than being this 20-degree Texas weather we've been having.
I know, crazy. Texas needs to figure it out for sure. But
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, absolutely. Me too. For our listeners, appreciate you guys tuning in. If you're watching the video, thanks for watching. If you're listening, this video, we're doing podcast videos now with all of our episodes, so be sure you head on over to our YouTube channel. Check that out. We got a lot of other different content. The video series that Jesse and I have referenced as far as my experience hunting some private here in Texas is our Texas Dirt series. It's on our YouTube channel. I still got a few episodes in the editing room I need to dish out in the coming weeks, so go subscribe, turn on your notifications, that way you're prepared for them. Whatever podcast app you're listening to this podcast on, go ahead and hit that follow and subscribe button. We're on all major podcast platforms, as well as our YouTube channel, like I mentioned, and our website, fallobsession.com. From that website, you can get to all of our content, videos, articles, wild game recipes, different media series that we're running, and obviously the podcast. Shop our Fall Obsession gear. We got some new spring designs that we're working up right now, but in the meantime, we're trying to clear out some of our existing t-shirts and stuff. So we got a few things on sale marked down for you guys from last year, so you can take take advantage of some deals while you're at it. Social media, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We're on all those social platforms, as well as Go Wild app. They're another good partner of ours. There's a link on our website if you want to go check out their censorship-free app for hunters and outdoorsmen. It's a pretty cool platform they got going. And also on our website, fallobsession.com, if you go to the podcast page, we're preparing for episode 100. It's a pretty big milestone in our podcast series that we've been running for a couple years now. Our 4 administrators are going to get together. First time all 4 of us have been on a podcast together, and we're going to do that episode 100. We're giving our listeners, our viewers, an opportunity to be a part of that podcast. If you got topic suggestions, questions, general input, stuff you want to send us that we can talk about in that episode, you can do it from fallobsession.com/podcast. Send that over. We'll be recording that episode here in a few weeks. And finally, our sponsor segment, Ridge Rock Hunt Company. I mentioned them at the beginning. I'm rocking the hat. Derek and Lacey over in Mississippi with the Ridge Rock Hunt Company. They book hunts. If you are looking for a new adventure, want to book that bucket list hunt, or you're just looking for a new opportunity and you're working on a budget, they can help you with any of that, get you set up. They got anything and everything under the sun that they can fix you up with a vetted outfitter in North America. So go check them out. Again, that's Ridge Rock Hunt Company. Jesse, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. We'll have to do it again sometime.
I'm down. Anytime.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right, guys. Thank you all for listening, watching, and we'll be back again with you guys next week for another Fall Obsession podcast.